Sales is so crucial for any business owner, really anyone in life, that if you don't know how to do it, you're not going to be successful. You're running into a number of factors. You're running into objections. You're running into money. You're running into you losing confidence. I'm going to show you the 3 biggest failures that you've probably done or you've seen people do that does not get the close. I'm going to cover these and I'm going to show you what to do about them. That's what we're going to cover in this video. Now, number 1, and the first thing to realize is money, right? People have it as a bad word. They go, oh my gosh, we got to talk about money, or how much is it, or they try to get around it. Well, really, if the person wants your product, and that's what your job is, you don't worry about the money. You are not selling money. You are not making money. You are delivering a product. So your product has to be valuable, and that's what you need to show them. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to cover that in a second, show you how to do it. That's the first thing you have to have in mind. Don't worry about the money. The money works itself out when they want it. If you show them the value of the product, the value of your service, they will want it. And that's the first point I always run into is people bring up the money. How much is it? If someone's talking money early on, they're not interested in your product. If someone's talking about money early on, they're looking for an objection. They're looking for the price in order to give you an objection to get out of it. That's the first thing to know. Whenever someone asks price, I see people go, oh, that's good. He's asking about the price. He's interested. No, he's not. He's not interested. You know what he's trying to do? He's trying to use that as a stop. So when they bring up money, I always say, we'll get to the price. We'll get to the money in a second. First, I want to explain and show you, make sure this is the right product for you, because that's true. So always cover your product first. Always go into the value. And I'm going to show you how to do that, because a lot of times I find people just downloading information, using words they don't understand, terminology. You think that they went to school with you. They didn't. That's why they're coming to you to get the service. So you have to show them in very layman terms, very simple. Here is what it is. And the best way to do that is get them involved. How do you get them involved? Questioning. Okay, we're going to get to that in a second. You got to question them. But so 1 is getting them involved. Don't overload them with information. They're not listening. Why aren't they listening? Because they don't understand what you're saying. So you have to get them involved, really find out about their problem. What do they know about it? If they've never had the problem that you're trying to sell them, ask them if they know someone who's had that problem. Ask them what is real to them about that problem. Why would that problem be worth solving? Get those questions. You get those questions answered by them. What are they doing? Now they're thinking with it. Now they understand, oh, this is why it's important. Before that, they didn't see the importance. And you're jabbering onto them about something that would impress you, but to them, they don't understand. So asking questions. Now we're going to cover how do you ask questions. I highly recommend coming in with a clipboard, an iPad. Have it right there. That way you're reminded, okay, I got to go over this, I got to go over that, and that is very professional. It's very professional to do that. Come with a clipboard, something, take notes, note what they say, then you can go back to it. Maybe they brought up a point that you can bring up later, but go in with that. Have a series of questions. I like to ask, well, why are you here, obviously? If that's not obvious, if they're not into a doctor's appointment because of something obvious, what brings you in here? Or what interests you about this service? Or what do you know about this service? I like to ask them that. What do you know about this? They might have heard something bad. Now would be the time to clean it up. Because if you're going and bragging about something that they heard something bad about, you've lost them. Now you're discredited because they know something bad about it and you're saying it's good. Right there, you've just done that. Why? Because you didn't know, you didn't question them. Okay, so questions. Big list of questions. I say big list, 7, 8 different questions that you either usually ask everyone or you want to ask that person specifically. Then I get them to explain to me. I get them to either look at an x-ray, look at their financials. I get them to look at something and say, well, what do you see here? Because right there, they could bypass a ton of the sales process just by telling you, this is what is going on. This is what I see. This is what I need. Boom, now you know. Okay, so questioning. Number 1, when it comes to money, also realize that if it's something they want, they will work out the money. You see it all the time. I hear from people all the time. They complain about money and they just pulled up in a brand new car. They just went on vacation for 3 weeks and they're complaining about a $50 copay at a doctor's office, or they don't want to pay a little bit more for some valuable service. People spend money. They make money and they spend more than they make, don't they? Don't you notice people spend more money? So where does it go? It's not going to you. Why? Because you're not attracting enough interest for them to give it to you. I'm going to show you how to do that. So whenever money gets brought up, don't let that distract you. Okay? That is point number one. Money, when they bring it up, go on to the service, ask them questions, make the service valuable, make the service real to them. If it's not real to them, if they don't need it or you see they don't need it, you're not going to get their money anyways. Don't even worry about it. But that's the first step, is to find out about them, build interest in your service or your product. Okay? Point number two that I see comes up all the time is you get distracted. They start coming up with objections and they're not interested. You know what? I'm not even going to push it anymore. They do something to make you lose interest. And that is why you fail. You lost interest. It wasn't their interest. It's your interest. You have to be interested and you get hit. There's some button that gets pushed that backs you off. And you're not present. You're not using their objection to actually sell them. You're not using that objection that they give you to help them come to an understanding of why it's valuable, they need it, right? So one of the things I highly recommend to a lot of our clients, and a lot of our clients do this, the successful one at sales definitely do this, they really work on listening and being present. Listening to the person and being present and not getting flustered, and no matter what the person says, even if they're insulting your product or saying it doesn't work, I highly recommend acknowledging whatever they say. Right? That shows you're listening. Doesn't mean you agree. A lot of people think an acknowledgement means that you're agreeing. They could say your product is no good and it's a ripoff. Well, I understand you think that. You acknowledge them. At that point, believe it or not, that has brought them to the point where they're almost willing to listen to you. They're willing to listen to you about the product because they're expecting an argument. Now they're not getting it. Right? I'm going to show you how to handle objections later on, but right now, those things that come up that conflict with what you're trying to do, that throws you off. So just be there. Just let them say whatever they're going to say and listen and acknowledge them. And okay, well, I understand you think that. I understand that you have that information. Good. Well, let me ask you, would you like another side of the story? Would you like some more information on that? Because I can show you with what you're saying, I understand. Now, where did you hear that? I always like to find out the source. Where did you hear that? Oh, Dr. Google. Or where did you hear that? You heard that from a friend of yours. Great. And what does he do? Oh, well, so he's not even in the profession, right? So when they get to see, well, yeah, I guess that did come from an unverified source. I asked him that and I said, well, would you like some more information on it? I mean, because this is something that you're running into and you have this information. I'm going to supply you with some other information. I always get their agreement. Would you like to know another side? And if they say no or they're shut off, at that point, they're not even customers. At that point, they're not patients. They're not clients. At that point, they don't want your help. But you've made it clear at that point, even that, I'm going to show you even how to handle those people to get them, because you do care about them. You do want them to get help and get the service. I'm going to show you what you can do about that when we get into a later part of the video. But also find out what they're running into, what they think about it, and just receive it. And whatever they say, you know what? It doesn't mean most of the sales that I've been involved in, at one time, there was something that came up, whether what the person said or their finances, that made the cycle look unreal. Made the cycle seem like it's going to go nowhere. And because I persisted, I would say 70% of the time when I run into something, if I persist, something always happens. Right? So 70% of those people that you walk away from because you did not persist, you've just lost. And look at your sales right now. Look at whether it's treatment acceptance or whether it's you're working with clients to sell a service or whatever product you're selling, 70% is what I find people walk away from. So right there, that's a big loss. Okay, what do you do when they do bring up those points that are objections? Now, there's a couple points. One, whatever they're coming up with, if you don't have the information, they bring up a documentary came out, you never saw it. They bring out that they can get it cheaper here, you don't know that, right? I go over with them, okay, well, I get them to explain that area that either they're having a problem with or some objection. Okay, well, where did you see that? That's interesting. That is a cheap price. Or you could go to another country to get this service. Absolutely. Do you know the different standards that we have in this country and that country? Did you know about? Then you can educate them. But if you can't educate them because you don't know, I still get them to explain that, because many times I've had people throw something out at me. I had someone say, well, I found that service and it's 1/10 of what you charge for it. Oh, interesting. Well, how do you think the quality is? And immediately the person goes, it's probably not good quality. He just sold himself to not go that way to work with me. And all I did was ask him. So many times we feel we have to agree with them. We feel that we have to give in and we have to let them push us back. And it's not true. You can kind of go, okay, well, interesting. Be willing to have that conversation. Be willing to get educated yourself. Oh, interesting. Now I know more about this. When it comes up again, you can either fix the situation in front of you, or you can use it for a later one. But be willing to have that conversation. Don't just blow out because of one speed bump, so to say. With that, you get them to tell you, whenever I run into these points and they're trying to throw it off, I say, do you know why I think this is valuable for you? And I bring them right back to the point that I'm trying to make, which is I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to show you why this is valuable, why this service or product is valuable for you. And I bring that back because a lot of times they're throwing these things out you feeling like they have to combat back and forth. And I actually show them that we're actually on the same team. So I work on that, okay? Don't let those little things throw you off. It happens way too often. Point number 3, I'm going to get to in a minute, but point number 3 very much ties in with how do you handle point number 2, because point number 2 are objections. But the reason it's a separate point in itself is what happens in point number 2 is you take yourself out. You immediately go, oh, and then they don't want it. You know what? Yeah, they can't afford it. I'm wasting my time. And then you pull yourself out, right? That's actually the time. Why are they throwing objections at you? They're throwing objections because they're realizing that they're probably going to buy it, or they probably should purchase it, or they probably should get the service. They're realizing that, but instead of agreeing with you, they're throwing things at you because they're in fear. That's at the level of fear. They're going to throw those things at you to throw you off. Don't go into fear yourself. Don't agree with that. Don't go down that rabbit hole. Instead, you question and you ask them about the source of that information. You ask them, well, why do you think this would be valuable for you? Once again, as we covered in the first one, you can go into more questioning. But the last thing you want to do is go, okay, and end it off. Because I see people get uncomfortable and okay, and they try to get out of it. That's not the time. And that's what sales is. Just like anything, any procedure, any action, when it gets rough, there's tools to get you through that. In sales, those objections, those points are just the rough point. It's like sailing, riding a bike, anything. What do you do when it gets rough? It's not always going to be smooth. So you got to know, one, stay in it. By staying in it, you have a 70% better chance of closing them. Point number 3, I'm actually going to give you the tools on how to handle objections. I'm going to show you why objections come up, what's actually going on with your prospect in front of you, and why he's throwing these objections at you. And there's going to be 2 different types of objections. We're going to cover that as well. But you look at why someone throws an objection at you. Someone throws an objection at you because you're selling them. You're getting them to agree to something. And that's what sales is. Sales is getting them to agree. That's all you're trying to do is build agreement. And you're getting them to agree, and they're realizing, well, I've agreed a lot with this guy. I really agree. Next thing you know, I'm going to give this guy money. And they go into fear, so they throw something out there. Most objections are not real. When someone says, I can't afford it, that's not true. When someone says, I got to go check with my spouse, that's usually not true. I have to check my bank account. I know almost to the dollar what's in my bank account, at least by $100. Maybe something came out I forgot about. Most people know how much money they have. They don't need to go home and check. This isn't, 1994 where you got to go to some bank and print out a statement. You can look at it on your phone. People look at that stuff all the time. All those little objections are actually little lies, and you have to realize that. Most objections are not true. They're throwing them out there to back you off. They're trying to make it so that you quit pushing them. And why are they doing that? Because they realize that you're closing them. They realize they're agreeing, so they're throwing in something in the mix. That's what an objection is. So defining that, there's 3 basic steps you do to handle objections. 3 basic tools, and this applies anywhere in life. This applies with children, with wives, with family, with coworkers, friends, anything that you're trying to get agreement on. When you get those little lies, you say, hey, can you come to my kid's birthday party? Oh, I'm really busy. Yeah, this Saturday's booked. And you go, oh, well, it's on Sunday. Oh, Sunday's even worse. I wish you would have said Saturday because that almost could have worked, right? And they're not telling the truth, but what do you do at that point? You know you were lied to. Do you call them out? Well, that doesn't work. You ever notice you bust a liar, what do? They lie more. They lie about lying, right? And it doesn't work for customers to bust them. That's not what you're trying to do. I'm not going to be a loyal customer because you busted me. But what do you do when they're throwing those little lies at you? Now realize, why does someone lie? They're afraid. That's why someone lies. Someone gets pulled over. The truth would be, no, officer, I did see the stop sign. I just didn't see you. Probably not going to work so well. You're going to get a ticket. But, oh, officer, yeah, I didn't see it. I've never driven here before. Your address is 3 blocks away. I'm new around here, or I was, whatever's going on. They're going to say something in hopes to get out of it. They're doing it out of fear. Now, no, these are not vicious lies. They're not lies intended to hurt somebody necessarily. They're lies that are intended, they're almost called social lies. They're trying to get out of something. That's why someone throws those objections, because they're in fear. Okay, now what do you do to deal with someone in fear? That's very important to know, whether it's a staff member, a friend, family member, you're trying to sell a customer. Once they go to fear, someone in fear is trying to get out of something. They're trying to get out of an obligation. They're trying to get out of a commitment. Okay, what you have to do when someone is in fear, one, you don't let them get away with it, because guess what? Now you're not helping them. That's probably one of the worst things you can do. That shows you don't care about the guy. If the guy tells you something and you say, okay, well, why don't you go home and check with your spouse and get back with me? Yeah, call me next Tuesday. They'll never call you. And at that point, you didn't care about that guy, and you knew you were being lied to, and you let him get away with it. And it helped no one. At that point, it really helped no one. You're selling a valuable service, aren't you? They need it, don't they? Then you have to persist and pursue. So at that point, don't let them get out of it. The other thing you don't want to do is you don't want to bust them in a lie. You don't want to tell them they're lying. You don't want to, I forgot my checkbook. Oh, that's fine. We take credit cards. As soon as you hear that, then they go, well, I don't use credit cards. Now they're getting into a kind of a battle with you. So you don't want to get into that either. Those are the two things you don't want to do. Let them get away with it and get into a battle. Because either way, you're either creating conflict or you're letting them get away with being dishonest. You'll find there's one simple step, no matter what they say to you, that puts you on the path to handling their objection. And this one simple step is so powerful that I dare say nearly every time that you did not build agreement based on an objection, every time you got an objection and you did not build further agreement off of it, was because you did not do this one step. And this one step is giving an acknowledgement. And I want you to write that down. I want you to have that somewhere big. No matter what objection they say, you acknowledge them. I see this violated 9 out of 10 times. I'll practice with someone and I'll give them an objection, and they'll immediately come back with me with well, you could do that. And they throw these nervous, rebuttals at my objection. And then immediately I feel like, oh yeah? Well, how about this? And now we're doing this, and that's not sales. So an acknowledgement takes this away and just goes, hey, cool, yeah, cool. And it allows them, it grants them the importance of like, yeah, sure, you got your own way of looking at stuff. You got your own viewpoint and opinion. I'm cool with that. I got to check with my spouse. I understand. Well, thanks for telling me. Yeah, I really don't know if I can afford it. Okay, well, cool. Well, I appreciate you telling me that. Just acknowledge, let them know that they were heard. All you want to do is let them know they've been heard. Now, and whatever the objection, even if the objection is, I think your product is not a valuable product. Okay, well, I appreciate you telling me that, and I understand that's what you think. An acknowledgement doesn't mean you agree. It just means that they've been heard, and you heard them. Point number 2 is also vital. When they give you whatever objection, you acknowledge them, and that brings down that brick wall. Right? They put up this big wall, and it brings it down to a level where they'll start to listen because they realize you're not doing this with them. Hey, it's cool. It's cool. Whatever you're running into, I understand. Acknowledgement. Point number 2 brings that wall down even further. You ever talk to someone and you can just tell they weren't opening up. They weren't really communicating. They were throwing very, just cut out answers that were not real and sincere, and they weren't communicating with you sincerely. Okay, point number 2 is you have to allow them and grant them the importance where you give them a little bit of what is called honest flattery. And really, honest just means truthful, and flattery is a compliment. You're giving them an honest compliment, right? Just some compliment. Now, why is this important? And it's got to be honest. It's got to be sincere. This is important because realize when they're throwing objections, they see you as opposition. You are opposition. And you're doing this step number 2 to show them, hey, I'm not opposing you. I'm trying to help you. And that's what this step number 2 does. It has to be sincere. It has to be honest. It could be, I appreciate you meeting with me today. It could be, I appreciate you being honest with me today. It could be, you got to check with your spouse. I see a lot of marriages have trouble because they don't communicate about finances. I respect that. And all those are true. But what you did right there is you acknowledged him and then you showed him, hey, I'm on your side. I actually enjoy working with you. An honest compliment that I like to give, if it's true, is I say, I just want to tell you, you're the type of client that I want to work with. Right? That's an honest compliment. What does that do? That shows that we can work together. Point number 3 is where you're actually handling the objection, but point number 1 and 2, bring more of this and less of this. This is going to crush you, and that's never going to get you a sale. I've seen people argue with others, and they go, who's going to win the argument? He's going to just, even if you're right, he's going to not pay you. So, money flows when there is agreement. Money flows when there is agreement. If there's no money, think of someone that you might owe money to, but you disagree. You never pay them. Right? You never pay them. So when there's an agreement, but think of someone you go, good, you did this service, I'm happy, and you give them money, you don't even have a question about it, you write them a check, it's right there, you pay. So when there's agreement, money will flow. Right? When you look at this last step, it's actually not even so much clever, so much as it's what you probably automatically do, but you don't do the first 2 steps. So without the first 2 steps, this third one becomes opposition. So the first one, when you acknowledge them, now they're listening. Step number 2, now they feel like they can work with you. Now they feel like you're connected. Now step number 3 is where you actually give them a reason to go ahead and do it and a reason why to work with you. Because now they're willing to listen. Now your reason. Now I could say, well, we do accept credit cards because you forgot your checkbook. Now I could say, well, I've never seen this industry get any cheaper. So if you're worried about money, right now is the best time to do it. Why would that work now, but it wouldn't work earlier? Well, simply because you didn't acknowledge them and you didn't combine your efforts to move in the same direction. So now with this new, what we call a face saver, to save face simply means giving someone an out. He just told you he has no money. So now what if he says, well, what do you know? I have money. Well, now he's a liar. So this is giving him a way out of his objection. This is giving him a way out of whatever he told you before. The face saver gives him that ability to go, well, I guess I could do that and say, and I know, you don't have a lot of money and but I also know that when you want something, you're very resourceful. And that's true. And the guy, well, yeah, I guess I do have this credit card I don't ever use, and I forgot about that. Yeah, there you go. Good, great. I'm glad you got a great memory. And the guy all of a sudden is willing to work with you. Those 3 steps, when they're actually practiced, drilled, and just use them. Just start using them on spouses and kids when they don't want to do something. Start building agreement with it. What you want to do on the third one is that's where you come in with your sincere recommendation, with your solution to their problem, right? But step number 3 also is this. Step number 3 is asking them how they're going to solve it. How would you solve that? That's a good point. It's a good problem. So what would you do about solving this? If you really wanted to buy this product, if you really wanted this service, how would you get it? What would you do? And get them to tell you. You know this as well as anyone else. Who's the only person who can solve their problems? That's right, them. So you get that person to solve that problem. He's running into whatever he's running into, and you just ask him, okay, what can be done about that? More times than not, what are they doing now? Even if they don't have a solution, they're now thinking in the same direction as you. Well, I don't know. And now they're battling it. But it's both of you battling the problem of getting that service as opposed to battling each other. So step number 3 gives them a reason to go ahead and do it, but it's only valid after steps 1 and 2. I find way too many times people jump right to step 3 and they get into a battle. Those 3 points right there are the biggest errors and biggest mistakes that I see in sales right off the bat. When I see, it doesn't matter what you're selling. All right, so by building up and practicing all 3 of those, and what I do, remember the questions I write down, right? I recommend writing down questions for the person, and what questions do is they get the person to think. You want the person to think. You want them to think about the problem. Because many times, how often does it happen to you? Someone's talking to you and you're thinking of something else. You got a communication going on between you and another person, but your attention's down the hall to a conversation that you find a little bit more interesting or you want to be involved in. So your attention's not there. So you know that when you're talking to this person, they're giving you the bobblehead and they're agreeing, but they're really not listening. So when you ask a question, what are you doing? You're now involving them. You're now getting them to where they are now involved. Okay? And so practice these different points, right? Practice those 3 steps on handling objections, and just practice on someone's telling you no. You smile, listen, and say, okay, well, I really would still like you to do it. How could we work it out? And then you can handle the objections, but you got to be there. Remember, point number 2 is to be in present time, right here, no matter what they're saying, and not in your head start coming up with reasons why they won't do it or how it's this or that. Just be there. The best people in the world are not necessarily the best for any other reason than they were present and they did it. Look at anyone who's successful and they were willing to be in present time, meaning at that moment, doing what they're doing while they were doing it. Michael Jordan, Joe Montana, Muhammad Ali, they were willing to go in the ring. They were willing to put in the hours of practice. They were willing to do something that others weren't willing to do and just be there. And you talk to any of them and they say, I failed so many times. I ran into so many objections. I wanted to give up so many times. But why were they the greatest? Because they didn't. So by being there, you're going to close 70% more. Okay, big numbers. All right, that concludes the 3 major errors of sales. I'm going to go into other big issues and the next 7 steps. There's actually 7 key steps in sales, and we're going to go into that. But what I'd like to know from you is I want in the comments below what you run into in sales, what objections you run into you feel you can't handle, and any barriers you feel in sales, and I'll answer those. Okay? I'll see you in the next video.